Well, engineers take chemistry because you're going to be using materials to make whatever it is you're designing, whether it be an engine or a solar panel or something like that. So we need to think about the properties of the materials that you're going to use. Additionally, some engineers will deal with machines or materials on a very, very small level, a molecular or atomic level. In addition to thinking about the types of properties that materials have, supply risk is always important too. In other words, if you figure that a particular element, dysprosium, for example, makes really good magnets, and it is used in some electric cars. But the problem with that is that it may make really good magnets, but it has a supply risk. In other words, we may not be able to get some 3 years from now or however long you're going to be manufacturing that car. So sometimes when you choose the materials, you not only choose them for their properties, but also based on their supply. So there's just a couple of things to think about from an engineering perspective about chemistry. So hitting just some kind of basic things in this lesson introduction. When we talk about chemistry, sometimes we look at the macroscopic level that you can see versus the microscopic level that you can't see on the atoms. And so macroscopically, we can see like a pan of boiling water that's observing vaporization on a macroscopic level. If we looked at a microscopic level, we would examine what's happening with the individual molecules while that substance is vaporizing. Let's make sure we have some terms correct here. An atom is when you have one particle with a nucleus and electrons. We usually draw them as little spheres. That's an atom. A molecule is when you have two or more of those connected. So like so. And the formula for this would be H2. So a chemical formula is describing what's in one molecule. These next two terms are talking about types of matter. These that we just defined are talking about the particles, the types of particles. But the types of matter. So you can have an element. An element could be just one. Here's helium or sodium. That's an element. Or it could be two atoms joined together. So I could draw it like this. This is hydrogen. This is an element because it's only one element. It's hydrogen. This is a molecule. This particle represents a molecule of that element. A compound has to have more than two elements. So water, join that right there. Water is a compound. It has two elements. Its molecules have three atoms. Okay, and then a chemical reaction. What's going on with that? Let me draw my atoms. So this is a carbon atom and an oxygen molecule, and they are reacting. Okay, and those are joined. So in a chemical reaction, basically atoms are broken apart and recombined in a new way, kind of like Tinker Toys or something. So I'm breaking a bond here and I'm forming some new bonds there that have new properties. Okay, so we're going to look at these different types of matter and particles and kind of label them. The first one we're going to do is to label the type of matter as either an element, compound, or mixture. And so for this, we need to Element and compound are pretty easy because we can see if there's more than one element present as a compound. What a mixture has is when you look at all the particles that are in there, they're not all the same. In other words, this one, those are the particles and they're all the same. They all have a green and a white. And so this is not a mixture. Each of those molecules is exactly the same. So this one is a compound. And it's a compound because it's green and white. This one, they're all the same, but this time the atoms are all the same. So this is an element. This one, all of the particles are the same, and they're atoms, but they're all the same element. So again, they're all white. So this is an element. Okay. It was this one that they're different. We have some molecules that are green and some that are white. And so because we have different types of particles, this is different kinds of molecules. This one is a mixture. Okay, so on that, to say what kind of substance, we're looking at the particles as a whole, whether they're atoms or molecules, and seeing if they're the same or not. To decide if the particles are atoms or molecules, well, it's pretty simple. This one, these are atoms because there's just one sphere. And on all of these, we have the atoms in groups of 2. So these are all molecules. So I already mentioned this, but a chemical formula, it means something different in chemistry than it does in math. CO2 is a chemical formula, and so it tells you what's in one molecule. This molecule has a carbon and 2 oxygens. So if I'm trying to figure out which one is CO2, I need to find one that has 3 atoms, and it has 2 of the atoms that are the same. And so this must be our CO2.